Hello and welcome to today's video about complex motion curve animation in Blender. Please, let me start with a little retrospection. Some time ago I made a music visualization with extensive use of curves and curve-driven animation. I have come across a few problems for which I have found solutions that I would like to share. As for the music, it's Karl Casey's Nightcrawler. Link available in the description. As you can see, this effect is based on a waveform object generated by Styriam Waveform add-in, which is pushed through curves animated with different techniques. The biggest obstacle was to join all these curves into one fluid motion. As for this tutorial, I decided to drop the music visualization stuff and do something more suitable for general purposes. Let's take a look at the intro animation. The path of the snake can be split into two parts. The first part is made of a branch animated by hooks, and the second is a spiral with shape key. Notice how both parts merge into one smooth motion. As this is a simple example, with a little bit of planning, this animation could be made as one curve from start to finish, without any special techniques. Nevertheless, I will use it to demonstrate how to combine it from distinct parts. In real-life scenarios, things can change, and the ability to adjust or replace some parts can be crucial. Okay, let's go back to the topic, but first I must give credits to Faeriell for this free tree model from BlendSwap, available under Creative Commons license. Link available in the description. Let's do an overview of tools at our disposal. Before jumping on the topic of curve manipulation, it's worth saying a word about curve creation. In Blender, there is a built-in add-in called Add Curve Extra Objects that is not enabled by default. I highly recommend checking it, as it allows you to generate curves of various shapes like spirals and helices. In this tutorial, I will use its spiral generation feature. Objects can either follow the curve or be deformed by it via the curve modifier. As the name suggests, the difference is objects following the path are not deformed by it. This tutorial will revolve only around the latter, but the basics of curve manipulation are common for both. Points tilt transfers to deformed object, so does its radius if this is enabled in the curve's properties. Both tilt and radius can be adjusted in the points properties in the panel opened by hitting N, though the fastest way to edit tilt is to use the Ctrl+T shortcut. When the curve modifier is added to an object, the distance between curve's origin and object's origin becomes a value telling how far the object is pushed through the curve. If the distance is 0, the object lies with its origin on the first point of the curve. The placement of the curve's origin point does not matter, as the object always starts at the first point, but the location of the object's origin is important, as it is a starting point of its deformation. Direction of the curve can be switched by selecting any point of the curve in Edit mode and choosing Switch Direction from the context menu. The axis used to calculate the distance is determined by the modifier's deform axis parameter. It means that the object has to be moved along this curve's local axis even if it visually does not match the direction of the curve. Note that this parameter also changes the direction that the object faces when following the curve. If the curve is to be rotated, it is a good idea to make it the parent of the object to prevent misaligning of their orientations. Next tool in our arsenal is the hook modifier. Select the curve's point, press Ctrl+H then hook to new object. Unlike curve points, the position of the hook can be animated. If the Animal add-on that is shipped within Blender is enabled, it is possible to keyframe curve points without any hooks. Last tool I would like to cover in this tutorial is the Shape key. Shape keys can be used to conveniently animate groups of points, especially when dealing with cyclic motion. Shape keys are especially powerful when used with proportional editing. Press O to enable it and start moving a point. All points within the range controlled by the mouse wheel will also be affected, but with proportionally less impact. Worth noting is the option to create a new shape key from a mix of existing shape keys that proves useful as a means to apply shapes. Sounds good so far, but the tricky part starts now. Generally, splitting projects into smaller parts that can be dealt with one at a time is a good idea, but in this case there is a caveat. Curves in Blender can be joined together with Ctrl+J, but it works only with curves with no shape keys. As soon as you add a shape key, you lose the ability to join this curve with another. One workaround to this problem is the fact that visibility of modifiers can be keyframed, so it is possible to switch between curves at the right moment. This is the path I took in the aforementioned music visualization. However, recently I have come up with another solution to this problem. Styriam Shaped Curves Merger add-on, link in the description, is able to join such animated curves with one click along with all shape keys. The add-on adds a new Join Curves option in the right-click menu, or it can be configured to join curves using Ctrl+J as you normally would. As you can see, both the hook modifier of the active curve and shape keys of the second one are preserved. As the location of the origin point of the active curve is now the origin of the new curve, all we need to do is link this new curve to the snake's curve modifier. Now, when we are done with the basic tools overview, we can start recreating the scene from the intro. The object that will be animated is a simple snake model with few shape keys for tongue and head movement. Tongue shape keys are controlled by simple procedural animation made with modifiers located in the Properties panel of the graph editor. As you can see, all three tongue shape keys have a sign function added which replaces the original keyframe with a sign function. I will quickly delete and recreate one of the signs to show the process. Shape keys value range is limited to 0 to 1, so amplitude of the signs needs to be lowered to 0.5 and value offset of 0.5 needs to be added. Phase offset needs to be adjusted so keyframes reach maximum values alternately. Animation frequency is adjusted by the phase multiple. Time to create curves. Let's start with the spiral around the tree. As a base, I'm using Archimedean spiral from Extra Objects add-on. In this part of this video, I am making paths for the snake to follow. In other words, I'm preparing the scene to start joining animated curves. If you are interested only in the following part, you can skip this chapter. The easiest way to manipulate curves is via proportional editing, especially with option connected only enabled, which ensures that only directly connected points are influenced. One of the methods of snapping points to the underlying surface is by the shrink wrap modifier. Time to test how it fares. Link the curve to the snake's curve modifier. Well, it doesn't work. Some mistakes must have been made. As it turned out, I changed the rotation of the spiral in the creation dialog. I didn't realize that this would affect the origin of the object, hence the mismatch in object orientation. Fortunately, applying the rotation will fix this problem. Enable Apply on Spline so the curve control points get modified rather than the final geometry. Apply the modifier so further work with the curve can be possible. direction of the curve needs to be switched as the snake is supposed to be facing downward. As you can see, closer inspection reveals that the curve is tilted incorrectly. Extrusion will help in visual assessment. Some smoothing and scaling for final touches. Smoothing probably should have been made before tilt adjustment. Time to add another shape key. let's add the next curve. Keeping origins of all objects in the scene center will help with merging everything together. Time to add hook animation to the branch part. I'm going to add hooks to the tree mesh first and use the Laplacian deform modifier to animate it. Firstly, add hooks to the outermost parts of the object and to the basis of the branch. Ctrl H to add a hook, then Ctrl G to assign each point to a vertex group that is needed for the modifier. Only one hook is going to be animated, but the motion would transfer to other unrestricted parts if there are not enough hooks. With Laplacian deform, a mesh can be deformed with very sophisticated interpolation, the results of which can be comparable to using an armature. Don't forget to click the bind button. As you can see, all loose geometry was modified in an unpredictable manner. Hooks need to be added to all loose parts. I want to control the branch and its leaves with only one hook, so I am going to connect both objects using inside non-manifold geometry. It's not advisable and can lead to many problems, but in this case it should be passable. One thing left. Add hook to the curve, but instead of creating a new empty, link it to the branch hook. To animate this branch, create keyframes on delta location and add sine functions to its channels. Delta location channel translates relative to current object position. Time for the main course, joining these animated curves. First, I'm going to do it the easy way using the Styriam Shaped Curves Merger add-on. The branch curve must be the active object, which means that it must be selected as second in order, as only the active object preserves its modifiers. Right-click, Join Curves. All left to do is to connect both parts and add some animation to the snake. Time for the hard way. As it is not possible to join curves with shape keys, we need other means of copying and transferring motion from one curve to another. Curves with shape keys can be duplicated and their shape keys applied to them. Think of it as flattening layered images in Photoshop or as creating a snapshot of a curve in time. When you create such a curve, you end up with a snapshot valid for one frame that you can join with your other non-shape keyed curve. Then, visibility of curve modifiers can be switched on that frame. As you probably noticed, that technique has one huge limitation: when the deformed object enters the transition phase, both curves need to be static, as the snapshot curve is also static. Let's work out two cases: transition from shape keyed to normal curve and from normal to shape keyed. The former seems somewhat easier, so let's start with it. Of course, I could just extend this curve, but let's pretend this new part was generated by another add-on or imported from another file. So, add another curve and keep the origin in the same location as the one it will be joined with. Duplicate the original curve and create and apply its shape keys. To do that, create a shape key from Mix, isolate it and delete all other keys. Switch endpoints handle type to aligned in order to maintain curve shape after joining both ends. As you can see, the object is jittering on transition between curves. It is caused by the hook modifier of the original curve that was not transferred to the mix shape of the snapshot curve. Hook modifier cannot be directly applied to the curve point, so one solution is to disable its influence just before the transition so both curves look the same at that point in time. The other case, transition from normal curve to shape keyed, is similar. Make a snapshot, as I call it, of the second curve and merge it with a duplicate of the first curve. Some manual adjustments of curve tilt are needed after the merge. Fortunately, all of the points of the following segment are tilted by the same value. I forgot about the hook modifier, which was not included in the edit mode by default. After changing that, the curve tilt has to be readjusted again. The biggest difference is in the keyframing location of the snake. In the previous example, the snapshot curve was a duplicate of the beginning part, so eventually both parts had a common start. However, in this case the snapshot is a duplicate of the ending part, so the starting location of the snake will differ for both curves. It adds a little bit of complexity as the snake's location needs to be manually matched and keyframed on the transition. Keyframe handles have to be adjusted to maintain linear motion over the sudden location jump. Essentially, this is the end of this video. If you made it this far, I hope you found something useful. Please leave a comment, your feedback will have a big impact on the future of this channel.